They told you bloodlines are sacred. They never told you how far some families would go to keep them pure. In the winter of 1871, Dr. Theodore Brennan rode north out of Helena chasing a rumor. A cabin hidden in the timber where no map showed a trail. The story came from trappers. A family that never came to town, that never traded for food, that never buried their dead in the churchyard. When Brennan arrived, the door was ajar. Inside, the stove was cold, but the smell of medicine clung to the walls. Not the smell of healing, the sharp metallic smell of chemicals. He lifted warped planks from the cabin floor and found oilcloth bundles. 7 of them, 7 infants perfectly preserved, their skin pale as wax, their eyes sealed but faces unrotted. Each child bore the same twisted hands, as if stamped from a corrupted mold. The Donnelly family swore they were humble settlers, but Brennan found gold coins in their cupboard, minted in Frankfurt, too new, too perfect, too clean for a frontier family. He thought he'd found a murderer's hideout. But there were ledgers, careful handwriting listing births and deaths, not accidents, selections. Some children given names, some only given numbers, every entry signed with the same symbol. A cross split down the center. This was not misfortune. This was policy. A family law older than America itself, a code written in blood. And when Brennan left that cabin, he carried something far more dangerous than gold. He carried knowledge. Knowledge of a family perfecting its own bloodline. Knowledge of someone funding them, protecting them, guiding them. Ask yourself this: who would teach an isolated family the science to choose who lives and who dies? Who would give them gold when they should have been starving? And why was Brennan warned, before he even reached town, to keep silent or disappear? If you think you can handle what comes next, follow this channel. Because this story only gets darker, and once you hear it, you will never look at ancestry the same way again. Someone taught them how to do this, but who? Dr. Brennan should have gone home. Instead, he rode south to Butte to mail his notes to a colleague at Harvard. He wanted the world to know what he'd found, but the letter never arrived. Weeks later, that same envelope turned up in his own saddlebag, unopened, as if it had never left his hands. Inside was his original report. But there was something added, a second page written in elegant script that was not his own. It simply read, "Dr. Brennan, you are mistaken if you think this is your discovery. Who could have written it? How did it travel miles without leaving the post office? And how did they know where Brennan slept at night? He tried to track down the Donnelly family. The cabin was empty now. The gold was gone. The infants were gone too, not buried. Gone, as though they had never been there at all. At the church registry in Deer Lodge, he found something worse than silence. Every birth record linked to the Donnellys had been crossed out in ink, not erased, crossed out neatly by hand, each line marked with the same symbol Brennan had seen in that hidden ledger. A cross split down the center. This was not just one family hiding its shame. This was a network. Someone powerful enough to reach into county records. Someone wealthy enough to make whole towns forget, Brennan wrote to the governor. No answer. He sent copies to newspapers in Helena and St. Louis. No paper would print a word. Late one night, a stranger knocked at Brennan's door, a man wearing a coat finer than any in Montana. He left no name, only a warning. "Dr. Brennan, your work is over. Do not open the ledger again." 2 days later. Brennan's horse was found wandering alone on the road to Helena. The doctor was gone, and in the dust where his saddlebags had been, 7 gold coins lay in a perfect circle. Who paid for his silence, and why did they want those infants so badly? Brennan was gone, but his journal was not. Weeks after his disappearance, a parcel arrived at the home of Reverend Samuel Pike in Deer Lodge. No return address, no rider seen on the road. Inside, Brennan's notebook wrapped in oiled cloth. The pages smelled faintly of smoke and something sweeter, like decay preserved in alcohol. The first entries were his familiar hand, the neat notes of a country doctor, dates, names, strange deformities in the Donnelly children. But halfway through the ink changed, the handwriting sharpened, as if someone else had taken over his pen. These new entries did not describe what Brennan saw. They instructed what to do next. They spoke of measuring skulls, weighing hearts, selecting which infants to keep and which to burn. Reverend Pike knew Brennan well. This was not his writing. This was a different mind using the same paper, and at the bottom of each page the same mark, a cross split down the center. The Reverend locked the journal in his church strongbox, but at night he swore he heard it shift, pages settling like lungs taking a breath, ink glistening as if it had just been written. He told the sheriff, who laughed at him. He told the county judge, who advised him to stop asking questions. Then the Reverend found something stranger still, a name he did not recognize, repeated again and again in those final pages. Patron. Not Mr. Donnelly, not a doctor, just Patron. And next to it a list of payments, exact sums written in European script, larger than any Montana family could have imagined in 1871. Reverend Pike planned to send the journal east for safekeeping, but before he could, someone broke into the church, not to steal the silver, not to take the offering box, only the strongbox was touched. The next morning the lock was open, the journal was gone, and on the pulpit 7 gold coins lay in a perfect circle. Whoever Patron was, he wanted the ledger back, and he was willing to pay in more than gold to keep his secret breathing. Months after the journal vanished, the Donnelly homestead stood empty again, but travelers passing through swore they saw lamplight moving behind its windows. Even though the roof had fallen in, a ranch hand named Elias Ward went to see for himself. He found the cabin cold and silent, but the floorboards were darker now, stained black. When he pried one loose, his knife came up wet. The blood had not dried, not in months, not even in the heat of summer. It shimmered like it had just been spilled. Ward ran back to town and told Reverend Pike. The Reverend begged the sheriff to investigate, but the sheriff refused, said the Donnellys were long gone and the cabin should be burned. That night the cabin did burn, yet no one saw who set the fire, and the next morning the ground where it stood was clear, too clear. Every trace of ash swept away like someone had raked the earth smooth. Reverend Pike searched the hills himself. He found a root cellar 2 miles from the old homestead. Inside were shelves lined with glass jars. But these jars were empty, only a dark residue inside them, thick as oil, and on the far wall, carved deep into the beams, that same mark, a cross split down the center. Beside it was something new. A single word burned into the wood. Patron. The Reverend knew then it was not just the Donnellys. This was bigger, families scattered across the frontier, all tied to the same invisible hand, all perfecting their bloodlines with knowledge they should not have had. On his way back to town, Reverend Pike felt someone following him. No footsteps on the trail, but he could hear breathing in the trees. A horse whinnied once, then nothing. When he reached the edge of Deer Lodge, there was no pursuit, but in the saddlebag of his own horse lay 7 gold coins, placed in a perfect circle. Whoever Patron was, he was watching. And now Reverend Pike knew too much to walk away. Reverend Pike could not sleep. The gold in his saddlebag felt heavier each hour. He decided to ride to Helena and hand it to the governor himself. If the sheriff would not act, the state would. He never made it. Halfway through the pass, Pike stopped at a wayside inn. The keeper swore no travelers had been through in days. But when Pike woke before dawn, his door was open. His boots were dry, even though it had rained all night, and on the table where he left his Bible, 7 gold coins waited in a perfect circle. No thief would leave gold behind. No guest would slip through without a footprint. The innkeeper saw nothing, except a tall man riding west, a man whose lantern cast no shadow on the wall. Pike followed that trail through the bitter root. At the old mission he found letters older than the town itself, correspondence between priests and an unknown benefactor, signed only with a symbol. The cross split down the center, and each letter included the same instruction: protect the bloodline at all costs. Pike begged the bishop in Helena for help, but the bishop's hands trembled when he saw the mark. He whispered a single name, Patron, then told Pike to burn the letters and leave Montana tonight. The Reverend refused. That evening, as he saddled his horse, a rider came fast down the road, not from the hills, not from town. A stranger in a fine coat with a pale face and clear blue eyes. The man spoke no words, only tipped his hat and placed something in Pike's palm. Another coin, warm as if it had been in the stranger's blood. Before Pike could speak, the rider was gone. No hoofprints on the road, no sound in the night air, only that coin and the faintest smell of smoke. The next morning, Reverend Pike's horse wandered into town, alone. The saddle was cut, not stolen, cut clean and pinned to the saddle horn. A single scrap of paper written in the same sharp hand as Brennan's missing journal. Your work is over, but whose work was just beginning. Reverend Pike was buried on a cold morning in December. No family to mourn him, only a few parishioners who whispered that his horse came back without a rider. No one mentioned the cut saddle, no one dared mention the coins. Weeks later in Helena, a young journalist named Clara Hayes was handed an envelope at the post office. No return address. Inside were copies of Pike's last letters and one torn page from Brennan's missing journal. The words leapt off the paper. Neat, sharp strokes, precise ink like an engraver's hand. But Brennan had been gone nearly a year, and Clara knew something Pike never had the chance to learn. The man who wrote this page had died in 1872. Or so the record said. Clara traced the handwriting to an estate outside St. Louis. A shipping magnate named Elias Croft, who'd supposedly been buried under marble, yet someone was still signing his name, paying families in gold, leaving that cross-split mark wherever bloodlines ran pure. When Clara visited Croft's mausoleum, she found no dust on the door. Inside the marble was cold, but the candles were fresh. Someone had been here in the last hour, and wedged between the stones lay another coin, warm to the touch, stamped not with a date, but with a crest she'd never seen before. She carried it to the university archives, where an old professor turned pale at the sight. He told her it was not American, not minted by any bank. It was European, Bavarian, the kind given only to families sworn to an oath older than the Civil War. Clara returned home to find her door ajar, the lamp still burning, and on her desk beside her own notes lay a message in the same perfect hand. You are mistaken if you think this is your discovery. The exact same words Brennan once received. That night she packed her things to flee west. But as the train whistle blew, she saw him on the platform, a tall man in a fine coat with clear blue eyes. He tipped his hat, and his shadows at his feet did not move. If Elias Croft truly died in 1872, who was wearing his handwriting now? And how did he know Clara's name? Clara boarded the westbound train just after midnight. Snow swept across the platform and muffled every sound. But through the fog she saw him again. The man with the pale face, the man whose lantern cast no shadow. She ducked into the last car, hoping to disappear among the miners and ranchers. But the passengers kept glancing at her ticket. Not at her, as if someone had told them she would be here. Hours into the ride she felt the weight of another gaze. A tall figure stood at the far end of the car, perfectly still while the train lurched and swayed. He never held a rail, never blinked. When she looked straight at him, he smiled without moving his lips. At dawn, the conductor knocked on her door with breakfast. On the tray lay 7 gold coins arranged in a perfect circle. The conductor swore he didn't put them there, swore he didn't even have a key. Clara threw them out the window. But when she opened her satchel, 7 more waited inside. By the time the train reached Missoula, she knew she was being shepherded, not followed. The stranger never left the car, never spoke, but every passenger gave him room as if they already knew his name. At a telegraph office, Clara sent a coded message to an editor friend in Chicago. One word repeated 3 times. Patron, patron, patron. The clerk looked at her pale and said he'd heard that word once before, from a priest who vanished the next day. That night, the train slowed for water. Clara stepped off to breathe and found herself alone on the platform. No lights, no station master, only the sound of boots crunching in the snow behind her. She turned. The man in the fine coat was there, blue eyes clear as ice. He raised one hand not to strike, but to offer another coin, and in that moment the air grew warm, like summer pressing through the dead of winter. Clara ran back onto the train, but when the whistle blew and the cars rolled forward, the man was already inside, City, and 2 rows behind her, still smiling, still not blinking. How do you escape someone who rides the same rails as you? Someone who never seems to buy a ticket? By the second night, Clara hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the weight of that stranger's stare. The train wound higher into the Bitterroots, snow smashing against the windows like gravel. Somewhere past midnight, the cars screeched to a stop. No scheduled station here, no name painted on the siding, just a single lantern swaying in the wind and a wooden sign half buried in snow. The conductor called it a service stop, nothing more. But Clara noticed no coal was loaded, no water pumped. The whistle stayed silent. Passengers filed out to stretch their legs. The stranger didn't move, didn't need to. Clara stepped down onto the frozen platform. The air smelled wrong, like copper and candle smoke. A man in a black coat approached. Not the pale stranger. This one older with a limp and a voice that rasped like dry leaves. He said he knew her name. Said he worked with Brennan once. Said the man following her was not Croft. Not anymore. "Get off this train," he whispered, "before it carries you someplace you can't return from." Clara demanded answers, but before he could speak again, the stranger rose from his seat inside the car. Passengers froze as he walked the aisle. Every head turned away. No one looked him in the eye. He stepped down onto the snow, and the lantern's flame bent toward him as if pulled by breath. The old man grabbed Clara's arm and shoved a folded page into her coat. "Find the names," he said, "before Patron finds you." The whistle screamed without a hand pulling the cord. The train lurched forward. Clara scrambled aboard and looked back. The stranger was still on the platform, but the old man was gone. The lantern lay broken in the snow, and for a second Clara swore she saw a pool of blood steaming against the cold. When she opened the page in her coat, she found handwriting identical to Brennan's journal, but the names were crossed out in red ink. All except one, her own. Clara waited until the next stop to slip off the train. No luggage, no ticket, only that folded page with her name staring back at her in red ink. She walked 20 miles through snow into the nearest town, a mining camp called Silver Gate. The kind of place where no one asked questions. If you paid in gold, Clara didn't dare. She spent 2 nights in a boarding house copying the list by lantern light. 27 names, some familiar from old headlines. Bankers, railroad men, state senators. But most were nobodies. Farm wives, school teachers, children who'd died young, or so the records claimed. She wired her editor in Chicago, asked him to check every name against the census. The reply came fast and cold. Half of them were officially dead. The rest had no record of ever being born. That night someone knocked at her door. Not the innkeeper, not another guest. A slow, polite knock. 3 taps, then silence. When she opened the door, no one stood in the hall. Only a single gold coin on the floor. Still warm as if left by hand seconds ago, Clara fled to the telegraph office. The clerk was gone. The machine still ticking on its own, spelling out a message over and over in perfect rhythm. "You are mistaken if you think this is your discovery." The same words Brennan received. The same words she found on her desk in Helena. Clara followed the wire to the back room. The line had been cut clean. No power, no operator. Yet the key kept moving by itself, as if an invisible hand still pressed it. She tore the paper from the machine and stuffed it in her coat. When she stepped outside, the street was empty, the whole camp silent, lanterns swinging in doorways, but no voices, no footsteps. Then from the edge of the woods, that same tall figure watching her, hat brim low, blue eyes steady, and this time he wasn't smiling. Clara ran for the stables, but every horse was gone, every door left open, as if the town had walked out into the snow at the same hour, and in the center of the main street someone had written 3 words in the ice with bare fingers, "Find the patron." Snow drove Clara toward the only building with light, a boarded-up church at the edge of Silver Gate. Its bell tower leaned as if tired of holding secrets. Inside she found candles already burning in neat rows. No wind, no sound, no footprints in the dust but her own. On the altar lay another page torn from Brennan's missing journal. Fresh ink, same sharp handwriting. It listed 3 more names, all with a single mark beside them. A cross, split down the center. The same symbol stamped into those gold coins. Clara felt watched. From the choir loft came a rustle of fabric. She raised her lantern and saw him, the man with clear blue eyes, standing perfectly still among the rafters, hat in his hand, as if waiting for her to speak first. "Who are you?" she demanded. No answer, only the creak of the old wood as he descended step by step without touching the rail. When he reached the floor, his breath fogged the air, but the candles didn't flicker. "I don't want your gold," Clara said. "I just want the truth." He smiled thin and cold. "The truth isn't yours to want," he replied in a voice that sounded older than his face. "Names are chosen, not found." He offered another coin, this one darker, edges worn smooth as if passed through many hands. Clara refused to take it. His smile faded. Somewhere outside a wolf howled, too close for comfort. And the church door slammed shut, though no wind had touched it. The stranger stepped forward. His shadow stretched long and wrong across the floor. "Patron is generous," he whispered, "and very patient." Clara backed toward the side door, but found it locked from the outside. The stranger raised a gloved hand, not to strike, but to point upward. Through the stained glass above the altar, Clara saw more figures watching, dozens of silhouettes pressed against the colored panes, unmoving, waiting. Then the bell rang by itself, deep and hollow, and every candle went out at O. Donnelly's. When Clara lit her lantern again, the church was empty, but in her coat pocket she now carried that coin she swore she never touched. If Petron could put it there, what else could he take? 2 months after Clara vanished, a Chicago Tribune reporter named James Corbett received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photograph of Clara taken at a train platform, the date scrawled on the back, 5 days after she was last seen, and a note in sharp black ink. "You're asking the wrong questions." Corbett dug through every archive he could find. Rail schedules, hotel ledgers, census rolls. Clara had left a trail of false names, but everyone matched a real person who died years before, as if someone had prepared identities for her in advance. The Tribune wouldn't touch the story, too dangerous, too strange. So Corbett went digging on his own. He found Brennan's old case files buried in a university library basement, folders marked Donnelly, not for publication. Inside were pages of letters, names, and that same split cross symbol Clara had seen. The handwriting matched the page she carried, the page she died trying to protect. Or so everyone thought. Late one night in his office, Corbett sorted the names into columns, every line connected by thin red string. He stopped cold when he saw a pattern. The births and deaths lined up like a timetable. Every 21 years another cluster vanished, always near a railway, always near fresh gold shipments. He almost didn't hear the footsteps behind him. Not heavy, not hurried, just steady, measured. Corbett turned. But no one was there. The hallway empty, the elevator stuck between floors, as if someone had pulled the brake by hand. On his desk lay a coin, warm, edges sharp as if newly minted, stamped with the cross split down the center. Corbett locked the door. But when he sat down again, his notes were gone. Every string cut, every file replaced with a single folded letter. No stamp, no seal. Only 3 words in neat block letters: "Find the patron." The office phone rang once and died, and in the window's reflection, Corbett swore he saw a man standing behind him, clear blue eyes, smiling, even though the room was empty. Corbett didn't sleep for 3 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that coin glowing like an ember in the dark. So he carried Brennan's letters to a man he trusted, Professor Elias Finch, a retired codebreaker who once cracked wartime ciphers for the army. Finch worked in a dusty attic above a pawn shop, books stacked to the ceiling, old maps tacked over windows to keep the sun out. Corbett laid out the pages and pointed to the symbol. The cross cut down the center. Finch didn't blink, didn't ask where it came from, just whispered, "I've seen this before." He told Corbett about a secret ledger smuggled out of Prague in 1865, full of family names and numbers, all marked with the same cross, every page written in a shifting code, letters that rearranged themselves if you looked too long. "Not a cipher," Finch said, "more like a moving lock. If you can read it at all, it means they're letting you." Corbett felt a chill. He'd spent hours rearranging the names into neat columns, and somehow they had made sense to him. Too much sense. Finch fetched an old magnifier and studied Brennan's handwriting. He traced one line with a trembling finger and froze. "This isn't random. It's a date. March 21st. 21 years after the last cluster disappeared. They're planning another gathering." Before Corbett could ask where, the attic light went out. A single match flared on the stairwell. Someone was climbing up, slow and careful, step by step. Finch blew out the match in his own hand and hissed, "Don't talk, don't move." The door creaked open. No one stepped inside, but a gold coin rolled across the floorboards and stopped at Corbett's shoe, still warm. When they finally dared breathe again, Finch whispered, "They know we're reading it, and they don't care." He shoved the pages back into Corbett's hands. "Leave Chicago tonight. Burn these if you can, because the patron doesn't just keep records." His eyes narrowed. "He keeps promises." Corbett ran down the stairs into the streetlight, but every lamppost on the block flickered in perfect rhythm. 3 quick blinks, then darkness. Corbett boarded the midnight train out of Chicago with Brennan's pages stuffed in his coat. He didn't care where it went, anywhere but here. The platform was empty except for one figure at the far end, hat low, coat buttoned tight, not moving. Not even when the whistle screamed. Corbett chose a seat near the back car, but the train didn't leave. The conductor paced the platform, glancing at his watch. Midnight came and went, still no signal, still no other passengers. Corbett stared out the window and saw the man still there, clear blue eyes reflecting the platform lamps, smiling without moving his lips. At last the engine roared to life and the train lurched forward. Corbett thought he was safe until he noticed the pattern. Every light in the car flickered 3 times, then held steady, 3 quick blinks, the same rhythm as the lampposts outside Finch's shop. He switched seats, then switched cars. Everywhere he went he found a coin already sitting on the cushion waiting for him. Always warm, always new. The train slowed at a small town station. Corbett leapt off before the doors fully opened. The platform was deserted, but the ticket office light burned bright. Inside no clerk waited, only another envelope on the counter, his name written in neat black ink. Inside was a single train ticket, same destination as before, same seat number. A voice drifted from the dark end of the platform. "You can't miss a meeting that's already happened." Corbett spun around but saw no one, only the soft clink of another coin rolling across the boards toward his foot. He ran into the street, every building shuttered, every clock in town frozen at 12:15. But the sound of the train kept following him. Even though the tracks ran the other way, Corbett ducked into an alley and pressed against the wall, breathing hard. The alley smelled of iron and coal smoke. When he looked down, his hands were black with soot, as if he'd been shoveling coal himself. Somewhere behind him the whistle blew again. Closer. Inside the envelope was a single line written beneath his name. "Patron is patient, but not forever." Corbett stumbled through the back streets until dawn. Every door locked, every window dark. It felt like the whole town had been emptied just for him. He ducked into a boarded-up chapel and wedged the door shut with a pew. The air inside smelled of wax and dust. Sunlight broke through the cracked stained glass painting the floor in red and gold. Corbett spread Brennan's pages across the altar, tracing every line with shaking fingers, names and dates circled in ink, always 21 years apart, always near a railway line. The last cluster was 21 years ago to the day, and the next name on the list, his own. A slow creak came from the rear door. Corbett froze. The pew hadn't moved, but someone was inside. Footsteps padded soft on the warped floorboards, steady, unhurried, each one perfectly timed with his own heartbeat. James Corbett. The voice was calm, almost kind. "I warned you to stop reading." Corbett turned and saw a tall man standing in the coloured light, his coat perfect, hat brim low, clear blue eyes catching the sun like shards of glass, but the light on the floor didn't bend around him, no shadow at all. Corbett grabbed the pages and backed toward the altar rail. The man didn't follow, just set something on the pew, a single gold coin. "This isn't punishment," he said. "This is inheritance." Corbett shouted for help. No one answered. The whole town was silent as a grave. The man tilted his head. "You think you're running from us, but you've already arrived." Corbett lunged for the side door and burst into the street. The man didn't chase him, didn't need to. Every lamppost blinked 3 times as Corbett passed. Every shop window held his reflection. Except one, a darkened tailor shop. In the glass, he saw only the blue-eyed man standing where Corbett should be. He ran until his legs gave out, collapsing near the railway embankment. In his fist he still clutched Brennan's papers, but the ink is smudged away as if the letters refused to stay written. Somewhere down the track a whistle blew once, then silence. Corbett looked back, and the coin he'd left in the chapel was now sitting on the rail beside him, waiting, still warm. Corbett woke in a freight yard outside Toledo. No memory of how he got there. The papers that should have been in his coat were gone. Only one remained, a single torn page with Brennan's handwriting, 3 names, Clara Donnelly, James Corbett, and one more he didn't recognize. Underlined twice with a date written beside it, March 21st. A switchman found him wandering the yard and pointed to a telegraph office, a message waiting under his name, typed clean and precise. "Stop chasing ghosts. Come to Ashcroft Station midnight. Patron will explain everything." Corbett boarded a local train, this one crowded with passengers who never seemed to blink, all reading the same folded newspaper, the headline blank. Just a single black cross split down the center. Halfway to Ashcroft, a girl slid into the seat across from him, no more than 20. Dark hair, eyes sharp as broken glass. She whispered, "You're following Clara's trail." Corbett stiffened. "How do you know her?" "She's not dead, not yet." The girl passed him a photograph. "Clara at a boarding house door taken only a week ago. She's looking for the same man you are, but he's looking for both of you." Before Corbett could ask another question, the conductor's whistle screamed. The lights cut out. When they came back on, the girl was gone, only a gold coin left on her seat, freshly minted, edges still hot. Corbett stepped off at Ashcroft just before midnight. The station empty, ticket windows boarded, but the big clock on the wall ticked loud and slow, each swing of the pendulum marking the seconds to something he didn't want to meet. Pinned to the clock face was another torn page. Clara's handwriting this time. 4 words scratched deep enough to tear the paper. "Don't trust the timetable." Behind him, the sound of polished shoes echoed on the platform. Measured, steady. He turned, expecting the man with no shadow, but saw someone else instead. A young priest holding Brennan's ledger. And in the priest's clear blue eyes, Corbett saw the patron smiling back at him. Clara Donnelly rode the night bus through Ohio back roads, with her father's old diary pressed against her chest. Every mile brought her closer to Ashcroft Station. and closer to the man everyone whispered about but never named, the patron. The diary was written in code, half prayers, half warnings, each page marked with the same black cross Brennan had sent to Corbett, but Clara had grown up hearing these names around the dinner table. The Donnelly bloodline was never free of this shadow. She stepped off the bus in a town that felt emptied overnight, curtains drawn tight, storefronts papered over. Even the dogs were silent. On the steps of the boarding house where she'd been hiding, the landlady waited pale and trembling. "They came looking for you. They didn't knock." On the porch rail sat a gold coin, still warm. Clara packed before dawn and followed the tracks toward Ashcroft. She wasn't running. She was hunting. But every mile marker she passed matched a date in the diary, like someone had planned this route long before she chose it. Near a telegraph pole she found something that froze her blood. Corbett's pocket knife, snapped open and jammed into the wood. Beside it, a torn scrap of Brennan's ledger. Fresh ink in a stranger's hand. Midnight Ashcroft Station. Do not be late. Clara knew then it wasn't a warning. It was a summons, and Corbett wasn't chasing Patron. Patron was dragging him in plain sight, using him like a lure to pull her out of hiding. The sun bled down behind the trees as she neared the station. Every lamp along the track blinked 3 times in perfect rhythm. Clara gripped her father's diary tighter and whispered, "You're not taking me alive." But when she stepped onto the platform, a figure was already waiting at the far end, hat low, coat perfect, clear blue eyes catching the last light of day, and not a shadow anywhere on the boards beneath him. The clock struck 12, somewhere inside. Near the empty station, a telegraph key clicked all by itself, tapping out one word over and over. "Welcome." Clara pushed the station door open, and it groaned like a coffin lid. Dust hung in the air like smoke after a fire. The big clock over the ticket window ticked too loud, every second echoing through the empty building. She called Corbett's name. No answer. Only the faint hum of a telegraph key tapping somewhere in the back office. She followed the sound down a narrow hall lit by a single swinging bulb. On the wall, someone had written numbers in chalk, times and dates in neat columns, all 21 years apart, all ending tonight. The office door stood ajar. Inside, Corbett sat at the desk staring straight ahead, face pale, eyes glassy. In his hand he held Brennan's last page, but the ink had bled into one single black cross. "Corbett?" Clara whispered. He didn't move, didn't even blink. She stepped closer and saw the coin on the desk beside his hand, edges glowing faint, like metal fresh from a forge. On the coin was the same crest from her father's diary, a serpent eating its own tail. "Get up. We have to leave now," she hissed. But Corbett smiled a thin, cold smile she had never seen on him before. "They're already here, Clara, and they're not after me anymore. They're after you." From the far end of the hall, the telegraph key clicked again. 3 sharp beats, then silence. The light bulb above them flickered 3 times in answer. Clara grabbed his arm to pull him up, but his sleeve slid back. Etched into his skin was a fresh burn mark. The same serpent crest as the coin, still raw, still smoking. The front door slammed without a hand on it. Boot steps crossed the waiting room slow and steady. The man with clear blue eyes walked past the dusty ticket counter, hat brim low, coat perfect, still no shadow. He spoke without raising his voice. "Miss Donnelly, you've kept us waiting long enough?" Corbett stood up smoothly now, moving like a puppet on strings. "Clara," he said softly, "don't fight it. It's already decided." Clara staggered back from Corbett as if burned. The serpent brand on his arm pulsed like a living thing. Every instinct told her to run, but she couldn't leave him behind. "Corbett, fight it," she pleaded. His eyes were flat calm, the kind of calm you only see in the dead. "I'm not fighting it, Clara. I'm joining them." They said I could walk away if I brought you in." The man with the clear blue eyes stepped closer through the waiting room. Every boot step rang like a judge's gavel. "You think this is betrayal? It's mercy. Your bloodline has been running for generations. It ends tonight." Clara darted sideways through a service door into the baggage tunnel. The patron didn't hurry. He just tipped his hat to Corbett. "Bring her back. Unharmed if possible. Marked if necessary." The tunnel stank of oil and rust. Clara ran blind, dodging crates and hanging chains. Behind her, Corbett's voice echoed steady and unshaken. "Stop running, Clara. You can't hide from something already inside you." She burst out onto the freight platform, a night wind screaming across the empty yard. Headlights from an approaching train cut the darkness. She sprinted for the tracks, but every signal light blinked 3 times in perfect rhythm, red to green to black, as if guiding her straight into a trap. Halfway across the yard, a figure stepped from behind a coal car. Not Corbett, the patron himself. Hat low, coat perfect, no shadow on the gravel under his boots. "You carry what we've been waiting for. You don't even know it yet." Clara skidded to a halt, heart pounding. "What do you want from me?" He smiled faint and cold. "Not you, Miss Donnelly. Just what's in your veins." Behind her, Corbett closed in fast, gold coin glinting between his fingers like a key. The patron raised one hand, and every train in the yard screamed at once, steam blasting, wheels grinding. The noise swallowed Clara's shout as she dove under a parked boxcar. When she rolled out the other side, Corbett was already there, reaching for her arm with that serpent-branded hand. Clara twisted out of Corbett's grip just as the boxcar door above her slid open. A blast of coal dust blinded them both. She didn't wait to see who pulled the latch. She dove into the dark car and landed hard on loose boards. The door slammed shut behind her, and the train lurched forward. Through a crack in the wood, she saw Corbett pounding after her, the patron only watching, hands clasped behind his back like a man admiring a chess move. When the distance swallowed them, Clara let herself breathe, but only for a moment. The car was not empty. A lantern swung from a hook, throwing long, sharp shadows, and in one corner sat the girl from the passenger train, the one with eyes sharp as broken glass. "You weren't supposed to be here yet," the girl whispered. "They wanted you to walk in on your own." Clara backed against the wall. "Who are you? Why are you helping me?" The girl didn't answer. Instead, she handed over a folded sheet torn from Brennan's ledger. Fresh ink, a timetable like the chalk list on the station wall. Every 21 years, names crossed off one by one. At the bottom of the page was Clara's name, and next to it, tonight's date. "You have until sunrise," the girl said. "After that, they won't ask any more." The lantern swung harder as the train picked up speed. Outside, the whistle howled. Clara leaned close to read the faint writing on the edge of the page, a note scrawled in a different hand. Brennan's hand. "If you find this run south, don't trust Corbett." Clara looked up to ask more, but the girl was gone. No door opened. No footsteps. Just gone. When the train screeched to a stop at a rural crossing, Clara tumbled out onto gravel, dawn leaking over the horizon. For a heartbeat, she thought she'd made it. The timetable broken, her blood still her own. But on the road ahead, a black car idled quietly, engine humming like a beast at rest. And in the driver's seat sat Corbett, smiling calm, serpent brand on his arm hidden beneath his cuff. Clara hit the ditch and scrambled through wet grass. The black sedan rolled alongside without rushing, window gliding down smooth as silk. Corbett's calm voice floated out like nothing was wrong. "Clara, get in the car. Don't make this ugly." She bolted into the tree line. Branches whipped her face. Roots caught her boots. Behind her, the sedan door shut softly. No slam. No hurry. Corbett followed on foot, like he knew every path she might take. Clara cut downhill toward the river, thinking if she crossed they'd lose her. But at the bank, a rope ferry waited already unmoored, a single lantern burning, and on the deck stood the man with clear blue eyes, hat low, coat perfect, no shadow, even in lantern light. "You've run enough," he said, almost kindly. "Your father tried the same thing, so did Brennan. They all came home in the end." Clara turned to sprint upstream, but Corbett stepped from behind a tree, breathing steady, coin glinting in his hand. "You were never meant to get away, Clara. This was about making you come to us willingly." She swung a broken branch at him, but he caught it easily. The serpent brand on his arm flared red in the dawn. "Stop fighting. They don't want you dead. Not yet." Patron spoke again from the ferry. "Bring her aboard. Sunrise is coming, and she must be prepared before the light hits." Clara thrashed and kicked, but Corbett held her like iron. Something cold pressed against her wrist, not a knife, a seal, and when the coin touched her skin, it burned, leaving the serpent crest deep and black, like ink beneath the flesh. Her scream echoed across the water. Birds erupted from the trees, but no one came. Corbett half dragged her onto the ferry. Patron tipped his hat, and the rope groaned as the current pulled them to the far shore. "Your family kept the blood clean for centuries," he murmured. "Now it's time you served its purpose." Clara fought until her strength broke. The last thing she saw before darkness took her, was the serpent mark glowing on her own arm, and Patron smiling like he'd just closed a ledger. Clara woke on a velvet chaise in a room that smelled of old books and dusted roses. Tall windows covered in heavy drapes let in only a thread of dawn. Her arm throbbed where the serpent mark burned under the skin. A silver tray sat beside her. Water glass full but untouched. Across the room, Corbett waited in a high-back chair, looking almost ashamed. Almost. "You're safe now," he said softly. "Safe with family." Clara pushed herself upright. "Family. You sold me to them." He didn't argue, just looked away toward the mantel where portraits lined the wall, faces she recognized from her father's diary, men and women who'd died long before she was born. But the eyes in every frame seemed alive. Watching her, the door opened without a sound. A woman entered in a black silk dress, hair silver, smile razor-thin. "Clara Donnelly," she said, as if tasting the name. "I'm your Aunt Elise, and you are home at last." Clara backed up against the chaise. This place was burned down in 1901. Elise laughed softly. "A house like this never dies. It just waits for the right blood to wake it again." Patron appeared in the doorway behind her, hat in hand, eyes like pale glass. "The line stayed pure just as we planned," he said. "Your father tried to hide you, but even he couldn't fight what you are." Clara's voice shook. "What am I?" Elise crossed the room and touched her cheek with fingers cold as marble. "You're the key we've been guarding for generations, the blood that doesn't thin, the seed that never spoils." From somewhere below came the sound of machinery humming. Too modern for this crumbling house, too alive. Clara glanced toward the floorboards, but Patron saw her. "Yes, there is more beneath these halls than old wood and ghosts. Soon you'll see why your family built this place on bedrock." Elise's smile widened as she slipped a chain around Clara's neck. At the end hung the gold coin, its serpent crest now matching the burn in her arm. "Welcome home, child," she whispered. "Tonight the house remembers who it belongs to." Clara's footsteps sank into carpets thick as moss. The Donnelly house breathed around her. Every corridor seemed to shift as she passed. Doors that had been locked an hour ago now stood open. Portraits that faced one wall now turned to follow her. Elise walked at her side, serene as a cat. "Don't be afraid, child. The house only wants to know you. It remembers blood faster than names." At the landing, a boy about 10 years old stood holding a candlestick. His face pale, his eyes older than they should be. "This is Thomas," Elise said gently. "Your cousin, twice removed, though he hasn't been removed from these halls in quite some time." The boy never blinked, just whispered, "You look like your grandfather," before he screamed. Elise patted his shoulder and led Clara onward. The next room was a parlour lined with tall mirrors, but only one reflection showed Clara at all. The rest were filled with strangers, Donnelly ancestors long dead, smiling faint, waiting. "Are they real?" Clara asked, backing away. Elise only smiled. "Everything in this house is real, even the things you cannot touch." Down another hall, an elderly priest waited in a wheelchair, Roman collar yellowed with age. "Elise, this is Father Callum. He baptized your father in this very house, and he'll bless you too before tonight is over." Clara swallowed hard. "Bless me for what?" The priest's thin lips curled. "For the crossing." The hum of machinery pulsed stronger beneath the floor, a low heartbeat in the walls. Elise paused before a locked door and turned a brass key with deliberate care. "You're almost ready, but first you should see what your family has guarded since the beginning." The door creaked open to reveal a narrow staircase winding into darkness. The air was cooler below metallic with the faint bite of ozone. Patron appeared again at the top of the stairs, silent as smoke. "Bring her down," he said. It's time she learned where the Donnelly line truly leads. Clara glanced back down the hall. The boy, the priest, the mirrors full of strangers, all watching her take the first step into the dark. The steps were slick stone worn smooth by generations of feet. A single bulb swung overhead, throwing shadows that crawled like insects. Clara gripped the rail as Elise guided her downward. Patron followed close behind, boots silent on the stairs. Halfway down the air changed, cold first, then metallic. A scent of iron and something sweet, like rotting flowers. The hum she'd heard upstairs was louder now, steady as breath. At the bottom of the stairs was not a lab, at least not yet. It was a vault, the walls lined with relics of the Donnelly line, rosaries blackened with age, a baby's christening gown sealed in glass still stained at the hem, old ledgers inked with names and birth dates, every 21 years marked in red. Elise traced one page with her fingertip. "Your father tried to hide you, but the blood always speaks, always calls you home." Clara backed away from the cases, but Patron blocked her path. "Do you think your family's purity was just superstition? We've been refining it for centuries, long before science caught up. Now we can finish what they began." Through an archway, the vault opened into something far worse. Stainless steel tables, bright surgical lamps, and cold cylinders humming with life. Inside floated pale shapes suspended in green fluid. Infants, some whole, some not quite right. Clara clapped a hand over her mouth. "What are you doing down here?" Elise's voice was calm. "We're perfecting what nature gave us. The seed must be strong, untouched by the filth of outsiders. You are the proof, Clara, and soon you will be the source." On a side table lay Dr. Brennan's journal, open to a fresh page. The handwriting hers, not his, as if someone had traced his hand perfectly. The last line read, "She will not resist once she sees the truth." Clara felt her knees weaken. "They killed him, didn't they?" Patron smiled, faint. "He gave his life to the cause, as will you, willingly or not." Elise opened a steel door at the far end. Beyond was darkness deeper than the stairwell, and from it came the sound of a single heartbeat. Slow, massive, almost human. The steel door pulsed like something alive. Every few seconds the hinges flexed with the rhythm of that slow, enormous heartbeat. Elise reached for the handle, calm, as if opening a parlour cabinet. Patron's pale eyes never left Clara. Clara's muscles coiled. Her gaze darted to the surgical tray. Scalpels, clamps, syringes. She grabbed the nearest blade and slashed at Patron's arm. The metal bit, but no blood flowed. Just a dark ooze thicker than tar. He didn't flinch. Clara bolted past him. Her boots clanged on the steel floor. Alarms shrieked, red lights strobed overhead. Glass cylinders burst as she shoved them over. Green fluid poured across the tiles, carrying pale shapes onto the ground. Some twitched, though they should not have lived. Elise's voice echoed cold and steady. "Don't hurt yourself, child. The house won't let you leave." Clara skidded into a side corridor. Doors on either side rattled, as if something inside wanted out. Behind her, heavy footsteps. Patron walking, not running, confident she couldn't escape. Ahead, a service ladder climbed toward a rusted hatch. She scrambled up, fingers slipping on wet rungs. The hatch wheel turned but would not lift. Bolted from the outside, she pounded until her knuckles bled. Somewhere above, a muffled voice answered. Or was it just wind through the trees? A hand clamped her ankle and yanked her down. Patron dragged her back toward the breathing door. Clara kicked, screaming. Her boot connected with his jaw, but his grin never cracked. Elise waited, arms outstretched like a mother welcoming a newborn. "You belong to us, Clara. Stop pretending otherwise." Clara slashed again, wild, catching Elise across the cheek. No blood there either. Only a thin, white seam like cut wax sealing itself shut. The heartbeat from the chamber quickened as they drew close. The steel door rattled like something inside smelled her fear. Patron shoved her forward. The hinges groaned. "Air, Russ. Head out warm and damp like breath from a lung," Elise whispered in her ear as darkness poured around them. "Meet the first Donnelly, the one who never died." The chamber was round and cavernous, carved straight into bedrock. Moisture clung to the walls like sweat. A faint glow came from tubes, stitched into the stone veins of pale light running to the center pit. Clara's eyes adjusted just enough to see movement. Something huge shifted below the rim, slow, deliberate. The heartbeat thundered louder now, matching her own racing pulse. Elise guided her forward, whispering as if in church. "This is where it began, child. Before priests and ledgers, before science and syringes, this is the source of our blood." Clara's throat tightened. "What is it?" A rasp answered, not from Elise, not from Patron, from the pit itself. The words came broken but clear. "My blood. Still yours." Clara staggered back. The glow brightened for a moment, revealing skin stretched over muscle far too long to be human. A face almost human but slack with centuries of sleep. Eyes milk white, but still aware. Still hungry. Patron bowed his head. "We kept you alive as ordered, fed you, guarded you, and now she's here to finish the work." Elise pressed Clara's hand to the railing. The metal was warm as flesh. "You carry the unbroken line. Your veins will wake him fully. Do you feel it calling?" Clara wrenched free. "No, this is insane." From the pit came a low laugh, dry as leaves. "You cannot run from what you are." The tubes feeding the creature pulsed brighter. Some carried blood, not fluid. Fresh blood. Clara recognized the labels on the bags, names from the ledger upstairs. People long dead, yet still drained. She backed toward the door, but Patron blocked the way. "You see now why you were protected, why your father had to die. Purity isn't a gift, Clara. It's an obligation." The heartbeat quickened to a violent drum. The floor itself seemed to shudder. Elise raised a silver blade and held it out handle first. "Take it. The right must be done by your hand. One cut is all it takes." Clara shook her head as the chamber walls groaned. The voice from the pit whispered again, softer than breath. "Come, daughter." Clara stared at the silver blade gleaming in Elise's hand. Every instinct screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. Patron stood at the door, arms crossed like an executioner waiting his turn. Below them, the massive thing in the pit kept breathing slow and patient. Clara forced her trembling fingers to reach for the hilt. She nodded once, letting her eyes drop as if resigned. Elise's smile softened, maternal proud. "I knew you'd understand." The heartbeat slowed again, almost purring. The tubes feeding the creature pulsed in time with Clara's pulse, as though sensing her blood already. She stepped closer to the railing, clutching the blade in both hands, her voice barely a whisper. "What do I have to do?" Elise guided her wrist upward, pointing to the hollow of her arm. "Just a shallow cut, child. The rest will take care of itself. The blood will flow where it's meant to go." Clara swallowed hard and raised the blade, but as Elise leaned close, whispering prayers in a language older than Latin, Clara turned the point outward. A quick twist, a slash across Elise's forearm. Elise hissed in surprise, but again no blood. Only that same waxen seam closing before Clara's eyes. Clara shoved her backward and sprinted for the door. Patron lunged, but she ducked low, sliding on the wet floor. The blade clanged across the tiles, and she snatched it back up. The chamber roared as if the creature below could feel her defiance. Dust rained from the ceiling. The hum of the tubes turned shrill. Patron caught her by the collar, yanking her off her feet. "You can't fight this, Clara. It's in you." She slashed wildly, the blade biting into his shoulder. This time the ooze sprayed hotter than before, hissing as it hit the ground. Patron flinched, just long enough for her to break free and reach the stairwell. Behind her, Elise's calm voice cut through the chaos. "Run if you like, child. The house knows your scent. It will always bring—" "You back?" The heartbeat surged furious, now shaking the railings as Clara scrambled upward. Somewhere deep below, that ancient voice whispered again, "You cannot leave me." Clara burst through the rusted hatch and out into the cold night air. Rain sheeted down the hill, washing mud over her boots. The old Donnelly house loomed behind her windows, dark, yet somehow watching. She ran without looking back. Lungs on fire, heart still pounding to the rhythm of that thing below. She didn't stop until the trees swallowed her. Branches whipped her face, roots snatched at her ankles. Somewhere far off, a church bell tolled midnight. Though no church stood within miles, she stumbled onto an abandoned road lit only by the faint glow of her phone screen. One bar of signal. She dialed the only number she trusted. Detective Harlow, a friend of her father's. The line clicked. "Harlow, please. You have to help me. They're trying to—" Static swallowed her voice. Then a second voice answered, soft and wrong. "We already found you, Clara." She hurled the phone into the ditch and kept running. Behind her in the woods came the crunch of heavy footsteps. Not hurried, deliberate. Patron never needed to run. The forest itself seemed to lean toward him, guiding his way. Far ahead, headlights cut through the rain. A pickup slowed as she staggered into the road. The driver, a bearded man in his 50s, rolled down the window. "You all right, miss? Need a ride?" Clara nodded, trembling, and climbed in. The cab smelled of old leather and gasoline. He pulled away from the woods without asking questions. But in the rearview mirror, Clara saw something that froze her blood. A shape moving between the trees, keeping pace with the truck, eyes pale and reflective like an animal's. The driver glanced at her. "You heading to town?" "Yes. Just drive, please." "Name's Keller. I used to do odd jobs for the Donnellys." Her stomach dropped. "You know them?" He smiled thin. "Everybody does round here. Some of us still work for them, too." The locks clicked shut. The truck accelerated past the turnoff. Clara reached for the handle, but it wouldn't budge. In the mirror, Patron's grin appeared brighter than the headlights. Keller whispered without looking at her. "They said to bring you home." Rain hammered the windshield louder than the wipers could clear. Keller's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Clara's breath came in ragged bursts, her hand tightening around the silver blade she'd kept hidden in her sleeve. "Don't do anything stupid, miss," Keller said. Calm. Too calm. "They said alive if possible. Dead if necessary." Clara feigned a nod. Eyes lowered, then drove the blade into his arm. Keller screamed, swerving hard. The truck fishtailed across the slick road. The headlights swung through the trees like a lighthouse in a storm. Clara yanked at the door handle, still locked. She kicked it once, twice. The old latch gave way, and the door burst open into the rushing dark. Wind tore through the cab reins, stinging her face as she fought Keller for control of the wheel. He backhanded her. Hard blood filled her mouth. "You think you can run from them, girl? They've been doing this longer than you've been alive." Clara stabbed again, catching his shoulder. The truck veered off the road into the ditch, ploughing through saplings. Branches shattered against the hood. Sparks leapt from the engine. The steering wheel ripped from Keller's hands, and the truck slammed sideways into a tree. Airbags exploded with a muffled pop. Clara's ears rang. She tasted iron and smoke. Keller groaned, reaching for her again, but she jammed the blade through his wrist, pinning his hand to the seat. His eyes went wide with shock. Not pain. No blood, only that same dark ooze bubbling thick and slow. Clara shoved the door fully open and rolled out into the mud. The truck was already hissing steam, its headlights dying. Behind her, Keller pulled the blade free with inhuman strength, his arm twisting back into place as if made of rope, not bone. "Run if you like," he called over the storm. "They'll smell you anywhere." Clara bolted down the embankment, heart slamming louder than the thunder. Somewhere behind her, an engine roared. To life, another vehicle approaching fast. Through the sheets of rain, she saw Patron's tall frame step out, illuminated for a moment by a flash of lightning, still smiling, still walking. Clara ran until her legs burned raw and every breath felt like glass. The rain eased to a cold mist, and the glow of a distant gas station bled through the trees. Civilization at last. If she could just make a call from inside, get to Detective Harlow, she'd be safe. She stumbled out of the woods onto cracked pavement, a single pump under buzzing fluorescent lights. An attendant smoking by the door looked up as she staggered closer. "You all right, miss? You look like hell." Clara forced herself to smile. "Phone inside? Payphone round back." She slipped past him into the narrow hallway, where the smell of fried grease and diesel clung to the walls. The payphone hung crooked receiver dangling by its cord. She jammed in coins and dialed Harlow's number. Ring once, twice, 3 times. Finally a voice. "Detective Harlow?" "Clara, where are you?" "Route 17 gas station. I need help. They're after me. The line went dead. She tried again, but the phone was stone silent. The hallway light flickered once, twice, then burned steady. When she turned back, the smoking attendant was gone. Outside, a black sedan rolled to a stop by the pumps. Windows tinted so dark they looked liquid. The driver's door opened, slow, deliberate. Patron stepped out in a rain-soaked coat, calm as ever. "You made good time," he said, almost admiring. "Your father would be proud of the instincts he passed on." Clara bolted out the back door. But another figure waited there, Elise perfectly dry, as if the weather dared not touch her. "No more running, child. The family's been patient long enough." Clara raised the silver blade, but Elise just smiled. "You think that little toy hurts us? It only reminds us what we gave up to stay alive." From the sedan's back door came a faint mechanical hum. Clara caught a glimpse of restraints, leather and steel. Patron's voice, gentle, almost kind. "Come home, Clara. You've seen the face of your blood. You belong to it now." Clara turned to run for the tree line, but a third figure was already there, blocking the path. The gas station lights flickered out completely, plunging everything into black. Darkness swallowed the gas station whole. Clara swung the silver blade wild, hearing only the shuffle of boots and the steady breath of Patron somewhere to her left. A hand closed on her wrist, like a steel trap, twisting, until the blade clattered to the ground. Elise's voice brushed her ear, soft and cold. "No more games, child." Clara kicked and clawed, but another set of arms pinned her from behind, lifting her off the ground like she weighed nothing. Patron whispered low, "Easy now, don't waste that heart rate. We need it steady for the transfer." A black cloth smothered her mouth sharp with chemical fumes. Her legs buckled, vision tunneling. Through the haze she saw headlights sweeping across the lot, another car approaching. Hope sparked for a single heartbeat. Then she heard Detective Harlow's voice. "Clara, what's going on here?" 2 quick thuds silenced him. She saw his body crumple under the weight of a blow from the third figure. Keller alive, unhurt. They dragged her toward the sedan, forcing her into the back. Leather restraints clamped around her wrists before she could even struggle. Elise climbed in beside her, stroking her hair, almost tender. "Your father tried to run too, you know, but he came back willingly in the end." Clara tried to scream, but the cloth stifled her voice. The hum of the machine beside her grew louder, a pulse in time with her own heartbeat. Thin needles descended like spider legs poised above her arm. Patron watched from the front seat. "Do you know why it has to be you? Why it wakes only when your blood is near?" Elise leaned close lips at Clara's ear. "Because it isn't just the Donnelly secret. It's yours. The creature below carries your line as well. Your blood will not feed it, child. It will wake it." The needle pierced her skin, cold fire racing up her veins. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Patron's smile reflected in the window, and her own eyes staring back, pale and glassy, not entirely human anymore.